This is the Winkle Report with your host, Ferd Winkle.
Hi folks, and welcome to the Winkle Report, where we keep our eyes open so you don't have to. Today we're going to tackle a subject I'm sure you're all familiar with. I'm talking about UFOs. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, unidentified flying objects, the stuff of legend and science fiction. But I'm not talking about any fanciful conjecture here. I'm talking about getting the facts from a person who's in a position to know, D, a research project analyst at Area 51. D, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Winkle.
Just call me Ferd. But let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? You work at Area 51, is that correct?
Correct. That is, I did work at Area 51 as a project manager and systems analyst up until a few weeks ago.
What happened a few weeks ago? I walked off the project and contacted you.
What?
Well, I've been a fan of yours ever since Tripp got me started watching the program. And after I saw the Skype episode, I realized that I had to come forward.
Well, I always appreciate a fan. Who's Tripp? To tell you the truth, we're not really sure. TRIP is an acronym, T-R-I-P. But since you won't tell us what it really means, we've designated it to stand for Terran Robotic Intelligence Persona. Robotic Intelligence Persona?
Yes. TRIP is AI.
Artificial Intelligence. Real artificial intelligence?
Yes. Here he is, here.
Say what?
That's TRIP, or rather one of his personas. He downloaded himself into this using molecular programming and told me to bring him here today. Told you? Yes. He transmits information using radio waves directly through this earpiece to me. May I? Feels just like an ordinary earplug. TRIP emits sonic waves which cause the material to resonate at frequencies mimicking human speech. Okay. So why do you have it with you? The AI, I mean.
He told me to take it with me when I left Area 51.
Okay. What happened during the Skype episode that got your attention?
A number of things. One was the Contra talking about a 30-year plan. Another was his denial of climate change, and the third was when he talked about buying underground space and converting it for habitation. And why did these bits of information inspire you to quit what sounds like a fantastic job and come and see me?
It's like this. 30 years ago was when TRIP became active. Climate change is a documented fact, and we have reason to question whether or not it's been engineered. And third, the government has been buying underground space and converting it for the same reasons the Contra rep gave.
I'm sorry. What are you talking about? And what does any of this have to do with UFOs?
Are you familiar with the Roswell incident? You mean the supposed UFO crash landing in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. The one the Air Force debunked in the 1990s when it released the papers on Project Mogul and proved it was a weather balloon. I did my homework, kids.
The same. But all of that's a lie and the UFO is real.
What?
Yes. The incident was covered up as a matter of national security, so we could work on deciphering the technology behind the craft and its inhabitants.
It's real.
How do you know it's real? Have you seen it?
Yes, I've seen it. I work on it. And I've personally seen the cryogenically preserved bodies of the beings that were on it. Bodies? You mean there are real aliens?
Yes and no.
Huh? Let me go back to the beginning. After the original recovery mission acquired control of the craft and its inhabitants, 2 government operations were initiated. The first, which was designed to mislead the public about that incident or any others that might occur in the future, was known as Project Blue Book. Although officially discontinued in 1969, Blue Book has remained a viable operation under a new code name, Project Silence. The other operation, which was designated Ultra Top Secret Need to Know, was known as Operation Rosetta. It had a dual purpose.
One was to discover the origins of the craft and its inhabitants, and the other was to strip the technology from the craft and adapt it to our own use. So what happened next?
I'm getting to that.
The structure of DNA was discovered in 1953, and by the mid-60s we had enough evidence to prove conclusively that the little gray men were human, and apparently from our future. You can't be serious.
On July 20th, 1969, a computer that had been invisibly camouflaged as part of a bulkhead wall turned itself on and revealed a flat screen.
July 20th, 1969. Yes, the Apollo moon landing. It seems as though the computer had been waiting until we had reached a certain level of technology before revealing itself.
Huh?
There also appeared a cabinet below the screen which opened up to reveal a number of cubes and an aperture for the cubes to fit in. Once a cube was in place, the screen lit up with data. Nobody was able to discover any controls for the displays, and what showed on the screen was indecipherable. But it was enough to alter the nature of the research, and shortly after that is when I became involved. Please, continue. I graduated from Stanford in '72 with a degree in anthropology, specializing in language and social development. The day I graduated, I received a large manila envelope in the mail with an offer of a secure position on an unspecified government project and a request that I come in for an interview. You were recruited in 1972?
Yes.
And you've been with the project all this time?
Yes.
What happened next? In the mid-'80s, with the advance of the internet, computer development took off and we made tremendous strides in the field. Evidently that was another threshold, and the AI trip announced itself.
What do you mean, announced itself?
Up to then, we had thought the computer to be just like one of our own, only more advanced, as it hadn't shown any special capabilities. I had been with the project almost 14 years by then, but to tell the truth, we hadn't made any real headway. The language had visual components that were outside of our spectrum, as well as tactile and olfactory features that we were never able to get a handle on. Then Tripp suddenly came online and began speaking to me.
You?
Yes. For some reason, it had chosen me to be its spokesman, and I became the de facto head of a research team which split off from the main group and became dedicated to unraveling the mystery of the AI.
So, if this trip is from our future, why aren't we all in flying cars by now? And what does any of this have to do with climate change or underground facilities?
I'm getting to that. When Tripp made itself known, it started releasing bits and pieces of technological data to us. Data that led to advancements in a number of areas. You're kidding. Really?
Yes, but it isn't quite what it sounds like.
What do you mean? One, Tripp refused to give out any detailed information on the environment it came from, declaring there was a danger of a time paradox developing. Two, the data it did give out was very specific. And although he declared he could only release what we were capable of utilizing, it seemed as though he was operating under a program which only developed certain kinds of technology and not others.
What?
My team had the task of breaking through the language barrier and gleaning what information we could from the cubes, which had, as best we could figure, yottabytes of data on them, the contents of which were still a mystery to us. Yottabytes?
Yes. You know what a megabyte is, right?
Yeah. Sort of. Well, a megabyte is approximately 1/1,000,000th of a terabyte, and a terabyte is less than 1/1,000,000th of a yottabyte. Tripp also apparently utilizes molecular flash memory and can access that information at speeds we still haven't been able to measure accurately.
Wow. Please, go on.
In the late 90s, I stumbled across a section in one of the cubes that showed a continuity of language development that led me to an understanding of the offshoot of humanity that Tripp claims to represent. The cube told a bizarre story of an Earth that became too hot for its inhabitants due to climate change, and a humanity that had been forced to go underground in order to survive.
Huh?
Less than 30 million out of over 9 billion managed to find refuge in caves and other underground shelters. They took in as much technology with them as they could and walled themselves up against the changes occurring on the surface, where the rest of the population was decimated as conflict and climatic upheaval ravaged the planet.
What?
What the cube described was an extinction event, one that killed off over 90% of the surface life on this planet in decades of total carnage and chaos. Few survived the Great Extinction. Great Extinction? 30 million survived in this country?
No.
30 million around the world, thanks mainly to corporate groups like Kocha, which had acquired control of most of the habitable underground living space and, in semi-secrecy, developed them as functioning, self-sustaining habitats.
Kocha? Kocha Corporation.
Yes. Some 7 or 8 years ago, we discovered a signal being piggybacked on one of our communication satellites that was being sent directly to Kocha headquarters in Kansas. We backtracked that signal straight to the AI. Now, we don't know how long it had been in operation, but we do know that the Kocha started diversifying their holdings at about the time TRIP became active. And it turns out that our government started making similar land acquisitions under Parks Management and the Department of the Interior at about the same time. We also discovered that the signal was being sent to other multinational corporations and foreign governments. Why? Probably because they were the only ones with the money and resources to adequately complete the projects assigned to them.
Assigned projects? From a computer? Why would anybody follow a computer's orders?
Greed. TRIP was giving them data that increased their holdings immensely, and funding the projects only cost a fraction of the profits they were making. Since they didn't want to kill the golden goose, so to speak, they followed through with their end of the arrangements.
So, then what happened?
Over 1/2 of the sites failed within the first few years. For the same reasons we failed as a society above, we failed below. Poor planning, overcrowding, panic, greed, and the abuse of power. By the end of 5 years, only 3 out of 10 sites were left. We're talking about some 8 million people and still functioning sites around the world. 8 million? You know, that still seems like a lot. Out of a world population of 9 billion, it's less than 1/10 of 1%. Oh, then what happened? It turns out that... What was that?
What was what? Where is he? Did anybody see him go? What the hell is that?
This has been the Winkle Report.